Hello all, I hope you're doing well today. I saw this tweet by the content creator Morgoth. He's got a good channel worth taking a look at. And he stated here, this is regards to the Manchester attack. According to the logic of the regime, it's an English-on-English attack, which is a very good point and completely consistent with Keir Starmer's worldview that he was projecting just a day or two before the attack. And of course, this is made all the more stark when you look at the state of our nation. I did originally have loads of clips to show you, but I thought, look, this is just getting ridiculous. The video is going to go on for 4 hours, so I'm just going to really simplify it by talking about the Manchester case and a couple of other instances. First of all, it's now known that this Jihad al-Shami, the Manchester attacker, entered the UK as a child, I assume as some immigrant or asylum seeker, and was granted British citizenship in 2006. So almost 20 years to integrate, and this is how it ends up. Not exactly a ringing endorsement for integration and diversity, is it? More's come out about his family as well. Apparently his father, after saying how shocked he was that his son did it, people have dug up quotes of his on Facebook where he was celebrating the October the 7th attacks in Israel, which kind of gives you an idea of his worldview. Specifically, I think we can probably tell that given he named his son Jihad anyway. And on top of that, it's also come out that the attacker was on bail for rape at the time of the attack, which begs the question, why on earth was he out on the streets given how dangerous he clearly was, and leads us to the inevitable conclusion that maybe if the powers that be weren't so bothered about edgy tweets on X and harmless right-wing YouTubers, they might have caught this guy in the net. But of course, even when they do catch people in the net, it doesn't seem to matter. This famous clip is of a guy attacking another man, I think a Middle Easterner, for burning the Quran. I think he's some atheist Middle Easterner who burnt the Quran, and then a Muslim comes and attacks him with a knife. He got off scot-free, apparently. And as always, we all know this wouldn't be the same the other way around. But we're supposed to believe these are just two Englishmen having a friendly dispute. But as I say, I had plenty of clips exhibiting how absurd Keir Starmer's worldview is. On your screen right now is one of them. This is the Lord Mayor of Rotherham speaking to, well, her constituents, as you can see. They all look like they're from Pakistan or Bangladesh or somewhere, but in the worldview of Keir Starmer, just as English as you or I, and you're evil. He's going to fight you if you dare to disagree. But this really sums up the problem we're in, and it was on X yesterday quite evident that people were making the point that Starmer's response, the government's response to the Manchester attack, was quite interesting. Many people, including Starmer, were coming out and saying they're going to do everything to protect the Jewish community, that they stand with British Jews. Fair enough, they've been attacked, you want to make sure they're protected, fine. But many people pointed towards Starmer's rhetoric after Southport. We don't hear language about being protected. We don't hear language about how upset he is about this. We don't see him sympathising with the community. No, when it happens to British girls, it just seems that he sets up 24-hour law courts and will throw people in jail for years if they say anything too edgy. But talking of people who seem to have an ethnic grievance against Whitey, we have David Lammy here. He was heckled after speaking outside the Manchester synagogue. Pretty clear sign that his view of diversity as our strength isn't exactly working out in real time. And David Lammy famously believes in reparations for black folks, given he's so well integrated. And so does the manufactured national treasure, who's a treasure to absolutely nobody, but the brainwashed Blairite, Lenny Henry, believes that the UK should pay 19 trillion in slavery reparations. The UK economy is at 3.6 trillion. So again, he knows that this is totally impossible, but the only reason he says this, presumably, is because he's either A, so well integrated, or B, because he has a seething bitter hatred in his heart and soul. I think if you're fair, you can see that the British already paid back and more any sin that was accrued in slavery after ending it around the world and creating the modern world, which has given millions, if not billions around the world, a much higher standard of living than they ever would have otherwise experienced. But the point I'm making with all of this is people have been very patient and just waited for all this madness to go away, but it doesn't. It just ramps up and up and up. And they're now at the point where they're just waiting for that last straw to tip them over the edge. And I think scenes like this are that last straw.
Trying my hardest to bring community cohesion. I've been overwhelmed with the contacts I've had from people within Falkirk. And, you know, there is a true unrest, and it's scary. It's scary as a local resident, somebody who's born and bred here. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, do you see why this is people sometimes think that reform are very much against having people here?
It just came out,
That's unfortunate for you, I guess, but ultimately, do you see why people who aren't from here, who have maybe made their home here, are annoyed when they hear an elected official say that people are born and bred here?
Now, many people here have pointed towards the appalling behaviour of this Liberal journalist, and no doubt he's one of these sickeningly obsequious figures who pays deference to the overarching ideology of the age. But, you know, they're ten a penny. What really interests me is the response of this councillor, who's a reform councillor, by the way, who checks her own thinking, i.e. the thought police are in her own head. Now, the point I'm making here is that across the country there have been many straws that have broken many camels' backs, and the question of identity is very much back on the scene, and that is a sign that the Liberal regime has completely lost control of the narrative. I actually think it's really interesting to see this play out in real time. It's a very interesting exercise in how political power works, but also cultural power, and also the limits we put on ourselves. What I mean by that is the identity stuff has been very well protected by the regime, by the label of it being far right, to self-identify as British or English ethnically, or even white. But it really is very simple in reality. It's basic logic, and more people are finding the guts to say it. And that's what it really is. It's about guts, not logic. And I'll explain what I mean here. I mean, normally it would be un-English to talk about certain things. The Liberal regime try and parrot that even now. But they don't realise that those days are long gone. You know, the era of the constipated middle-class English is over. We're in an existential crisis now, and identity is back on the scene. But the key is, as I've said, the labelling of identity as far right. And again, this is the boogeyman I speak about quite a lot. And I should be very clear, when we say far right in this context, it doesn't mean you're actually far right. But more importantly, even if you were far right, it's still irrelevant. Because when they say far right or fascist, it's just a placeholder for evil and violent. It has very little to do with the actual far right ideology. This is why you see this label of fascist even used by the Civnats on the left as well. You know, you're the real fascists, you want to stop speech. What they're trying to say is you're authoritarians, but again, neither side seems to understand what fascism actually is. But what matters here is the liberal system when it uses it, or far right means evil and violent. Now, the point I'm making with this is the issue of identity has been kicked into the long grass of negative association for decades. So even if you dare contemplate it as an individual, just like the reform councillor, you check yourself. You think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm doing something evil here. I might become bad if I acknowledge that I have an identity. It's sort of like a Pandora's box type thing. If I open it, God knows what will come out. Now that, I believe, is a manufactured response from the liberal power structure. No, I'm not saying here there aren't people on the quote far right who aren't a bit nuts, who aren't aggressive, who haven't used that politics as a vector for their own personal issues or some hatred. That does exist. It's not nearly as bad as the mainstream make it seem, but it does exist. And the mainstream wants you to think that these people are sort of not welcome in the system, but actually the opposite is true. Because these very angry people snarling at the mouth are the sort of symbolic two-headed demon dog that aggressively guard the gates of forbidden knowledge, if you will, that the liberal system doesn't want you to go near. I've said it before, it's why they want you to be angry, to be mad when you speak about these things, because it's so easy to point the finger and fulfill the liberal cliche about being quote-unquote hateful. The point I'm making here is that if the liberal system can make people believe that the counter worldviews to its own are evil and destructive and hateful, it will have quite a powerful effect on people who've been healthily socialised. What I mean is, we tend to read the world through our nervous systems. We detect what's safe and what's not. Power can hijack that system by drawing boundaries around what's socially acceptable and what's not. So for instance, if you see someone who's ostracized by the mainstream, who screams and shouts, you know on an instinctive level that you will be ostracized yourself if you engage in that line of thinking. The nervous system says, I'll be lost in the wild, I'll be alone, I'll be scared, I'll be seen as a freak. You might have noted here that none of this is about logic, nor is it about ethics. It's about moral framing, and that's why the liberal system has been so powerful. It's why the London liberal lovies feel so correct in their opinions, because they feel morally superior to you. It's through this frame we can understand why the liberal objection here to identity isn't logical, it's emotional. They want to protect their safe worldview that paints them as the moral superiors. Their problem is, of course, that the liberal regime has just pushed things way too far, and more people have gone into that no man's land of identity and got past the two-headed demon dog myth and found that actually it's not that bad. And they've come back with a light, and now, well, that light's spreading like wildfire. Even people like Matt Goodwin and Konstantin Kisin are on the identity train now, because it's very simple to understand once you realise there's actually nothing controversial about it at all. You just have to remove the liberal mythology of it all being absolutely hateful. And now that acts as a new energy source, which is pulling politics to a different position than a liberal structure. Of course, this is a massive problem for the liberal regime. It's an absolute code red, and more people are waking up to this every day because the arguments are calm and rational. Remember, if you want to change somebody's mind, be calm and patient. If you try and argue with them online, it's just two demons fighting each other and you'll never get anywhere. But as I say, as it becomes clear, the understanding of English ethnicity isn't hateful by its nature. In fact, it's just a basic fact of life and completely normal. And when you get rid of the screaming, shouting types, the liberal system is in real trouble, especially when it's as censorious and aggressive as it is under Keir Starmer. As I say, the liberal regime has completely lost control of the narrative, but more importantly, it's lost control of the underlying moral framing, which makes it so powerful. It's why Keir Starmer centred the whole of the Labour conference on this issue of identity, only for it to be blown apart again after the Manchester attack. As I say, the liberal regime needs you to be bonkers, to be crazy, to be violent, to be foaming at the mouth. But when that doesn't happen, it just shows them up more and more, and they lose more and more people by the day. In fact, it's such a simple, logical experiment, this thing about identity, that once you get through the emotional blackmail, you realise it's dead simple. But I think we all know it's not going to be as simple as that. The liberal regime is going to kick back. And I do start to wonder whether they could pull some sort of false flag event. I'm not normally a conspiratorial type, but the liberal system is in such trouble at this point, it needs to do something to try and win back the mass of people and frighten them from identity. I mean, the risk for the liberal system is obvious. If the British and the rest of the Europeans realise actually we do have a root level identity, we do have a tie to our homelands, immediately that undermines the liberal blank slate project. And this is why I can see the system just doing something to try and grasp control back of the narrative. Maybe it won't be a false flag. Maybe it will be a mass campaign of censorship or mass propaganda across the board. Whatever it is, I think the system is in trouble, because as soon as people start to tap in to the sacred order, to the deeper traditional aspects of life, the non-rational, you're in real trouble if you're a liberal. At that point, I do think that you don't have to be angry, you don't have to be mad like the system wants you to be. It will naturally unfurl by itself because it's more powerful than anything ideology can muster. This is why I personally believe the best approach isn't to be angry and yelling online and getting all pent up and doom-mongering about the future, but instead to understand your roots, the depth of your tradition, to learn spiritual poise. Through that, you can start to understand the machinations of the liberal regime, how it tries to manipulate and propagandise, as well as understand its flaws. To my mind, we're being challenged to spiritually evolve at a very tricky time in history. If we can manage it, we really could build a beautiful and meaningful future. As always, these are just my thoughts. Do let me know what you think down below. Sister channel, The Sacred Way on Spiritual and Personal Transformation, is linked in the description, as is the Substack as well. Other than that, do subscribe to the channel if you're new, and enjoy the rest of your day.